Welcome to the Reconnection Club podcast, the show that helps parents heal troubled relationships with their adult sons and daughters. I'm your host, psychotherapist Tina Gilbertson. Each week, I'll offer you compassion, clarity, and personal development tips designed to help you reconnect, not only with your child, but with yourself. Now let's get started. Reconciliation is the brass ring for most parents who are unwillingly estranged from their adult child or children. But have you ever thought about what the relationship will look like after you and your child reconcile? Although it will undoubtedly be a happy time in many ways, you may already have some inkling that it won't be all cupcakes and rainbows. If you suspect that things won't go back to normal right away, you're absolutely right. Today I want to talk about what happens when an adult child comes back into a parent's life after a period of estrangement. There are some predictable challenges that still have to be faced at this stage, and I want to mention 4 of those potential challenges today. You may not experience all of them, but I can virtually guarantee you'll experience at least some of what I'm going to talk about in this episode. Maybe you've already experienced the challenges inherent in reconciliation. If so, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email at podcast@reconnectionclub.com. The first thing you might notice after the joy and relief of reconnection is that even though you and your child are talking again, maybe even spending time in person together, the relationship doesn't feel natural. You're no longer saying the first thing that comes to mind. Maybe you're avoiding certain subjects. You're not sure what might make your child upset, so you feel like you're walking on eggshells around him or her. That feels anything but natural. The main thing to know about this is that it's normal. You're not behaving naturally, and your child might not be either. But that's exactly as it should be, because what came naturally before created the conditions that led to the estrangement in the first place. Let me explain what I mean by that. Estrangement researcher Christina Sharp of the University of Washington has coined the term relational moral hazard to describe a sort of lack of incentive that we have to always be on our best behavior with family. Most of us don't fear any consequences for what goes on in family relationships because we assume that family bonds ensure us against loss. We assume that even if we don't always get along perfectly, there's no real risk of losing the relationship because we're family. However, as you know, those bonds don't always turn out to be unbreakable. But until we know that, we tend to let our hair down around family, especially parents and children. Parents who've been given a metaphorical shove by an adult child who estranges herself, they lose the luxury of relational moral hazard. They learn that their child, at least, has expectations of the relationship, and that if those expectations are consistently not met, the child will exercise the option of potentially removing herself. So if, after reconciling with your child, you're paying close attention to everything you say and do, it may be because you've lost that luxury of behaving, quote-unquote, naturally. You've experienced consequences, and you know that just because you're related doesn't guarantee closeness. The lack of naturalness post-reconciliation is uncomfortable, of course, but it won't last forever. Time turns every novelty into normalcy. Once you find a new way of being together, you and your child can settle into a rhythm again. The second thing you might need to deal with after reconciliation is that you might still feel hurt. Having an estranged adult child often means you've been rejected repeatedly as you try again and again to reestablish contact. Your child may have said things to you that hurt, or it may have just been that his behavior was so cold it chilled you to the bone. Since you're a human being, the experience of unwanted estrangement can leave scars that don't disappear just because you've reconciled. The first thing to do is to acknowledge to yourself that you are still hurt. Don't try to ignore the feelings or push them away. And don't talk to your child about the fact that he hurt you. Just acknowledge to yourself how you feel. And affirm that it's understandable and okay for you to still feel hurt. After you've acknowledged to yourself that you're still hurting, you may ask, what do I do about it? Should I tell my child? In most cases, the best answer is no, because there's a good chance that the emotional pain you're feeling is the result of an accumulation of hurts, of which your child's recent behavior is just the latest contribution. Most of us, by the time we reach middle age, have a backlog of emotional injuries from various relationships and life events. These add weight to the pain of estrangement. And although you might get a spontaneous apology from your child, he isn't someone you can or should rely on to help you heal. Not only is he not responsible for the totality of your feelings, but he's not qualified to help you. Your spouse or partner, a therapist, or a compassionate, patient, and caring friend is a much more appropriate resource. Do talk about your pain with someone other than your child so you can try to work through it. And when you do, let that person know what you need from them. Maybe you just want them to listen and understand. If you don't tell them what you need up front, you might get an earful of anger directed at your child for hurting you, when that's not necessarily what you need. Unless it is. The third thing to watch for after reconciliation is that you might feel like you no longer trust your child. You find yourself feeling guarded in her presence. You don't want to open up to her because if you do, she might hurt you again with her words or behavior. Trust often goes out the window after someone hurts us deeply. There's nothing pathological going on if you're having trouble letting your guard down. You're just scared of being hurt again. And who can blame you? I know it's unpleasant to try having a relationship with someone you don't fully trust. You want to be close, but there's a part of you that's scared to get too close. In time, depending on how things evolve between you, you either will or won't find yourself willing to trust your child again. Until then, if you want to try to cultivate trust between you, you might concentrate on ways in which you can be trustworthy in the eyes of your child. What does he need from you in order to open up to you? Does he need more understanding than guidance? Does she need more empathy than assistance? If it feels right, you can ask your child, what can I do that would help you feel more comfortable in our relationship? The development of trust, even if it's one-sided to start, is a beautiful thing. The fourth and last fact I want to mention about post-reconciliation relationships is one I hear all the time from reconciled parents. Conversation stays at the surface level. Some parents remember the wide-ranging, heart-to-heart talks they used to be able to enjoy with their child, and they wonder despairingly if that will ever be possible again. There's no reason to believe you can't get back there from here. But during the reconciliation phase, surface-level conversation is where you start. If you think about it, surface-level conversation is a huge improvement over no conversation at all, or conflicted, heated discussions that end in hang-ups. You have to start somewhere. Try not to think of surface-level conversation as a wall that your child is putting up. It takes two people to have any kind of conversation, and with you walking on eggshells, you're probably in no position to have a heart-to-heart yourself right now. Recognize that after a hiatus in any relationship, nobody feels comfortable right away. Of course you're not going to fall right back into emotional intimacy. Those deep personal conversations require a certain level of trust and a comfort that isn't there quite yet. Give it time. Stay on the path of providing consistent, loving parenting, and trust that the path leads to a better place. So those are 4 things you might encounter after reconciliation. 1, it won't feel natural. 2, you might still feel hurt. 3, you might find yourself not trusting your child and feeling guarded around her. And 4, surface-level conversation will be easier for both of you than anything more in-depth for a while. I hope it's clear from this that reconciliation is not an event, but a process. Trust the process. And you might want to make regular use of the relationship tools available to parents inside the Reconnection Club. Instead of worrying about falling into old patterns or unforeseen pitfalls now that you're back in touch, you can develop your own simple, overarching strategy for your reconciliation. If you're a member of the Reconnection Club and have questions or reflections about the reconciliation phase, just post in the forums at reconnectionclub.com. As you may know, I'm in the forums regularly, responding to your posts, so don't be shy about dropping me a line. Or call me during our next office hours, which are listed on the dashboard page inside the club. Until next time, remember that you are a loving, lovable, and still growing human being. So please, take good care of yourself. Bye for now. If you've enjoyed this episode of the Reconnection Club podcast, I invite you to check out reconnectionclub.com. The Reconnection Club is for parents at any stage of estrangement from their adult, child, or children. So whether you've just realized there's trouble between you, you've been living with estrangement for years, or you're newly reconciled but still walking on eggshells, the Reconnection Club is your essential resource for information, support, and continued personal growth. With our courses and workshops, expert interviews, monthly Q&A calls, and a friendly, active community, the Reconnection Club is a wonderful place to be for anyone suffering the pain of estrangement from an adult, child, or children. So check it out at reconnectionclub.com.